and today I'm here to bring you a non-spoiler review of Ever the Brave by Erin Sumrill, and this is the Proustopia book club pick of the month for the month of February, and this month we are working with HMHT. Oh my goodness, I was so excited to jump into this novel. This is the second book to the great fantasy series by Erin Sumrill, the first one being Ever the Hunted, which Sasha and I read last year and I really enjoyed. And quick, right off the bat before I jump into the specifics, I read this book in like 3 days, and I have to say I liked it even more than the first one, which was always fantastic. And before I jump into the non-spoiler review, I also wanted to say stay tuned until the end because I have an exciting cover reveal and announcement to make, which is just like, you heard it here first, people. You know what I mean? But yes, Ever the Brave is the second novel to Erin Sumrill's series. This, of course, still follows our main character, Britta, who in the beginning of the first novel, we learn that she is basically like a wilderness pro. She can hunt, she can track, she has great skills with the bow and arrow, and throughout the course of the first book, like, she gets to use those skills all the time, but she also has magical abilities. She is a channeler, and she's a specific and special one where she can basically sense when people are lying to her, and on top of that, she has like special abilities with channeling energy, which we kind of discover through the end of the first novel. This book takes place pretty much right after the end of the first book. There's a lot of like huge political explosive moments that happen in that. So if you haven't read the first novel, definitely do that before you hear about this review because spoilers. This book is set basically Cohen and Britta at the beginning of this novel are separated basically due to the events that happened at the end of the first book. Britta is trying to become more involved in the court politics as she was granted her father's estate at the end of the first one, and she's basically trying to like regain his property rights and his nobility that were stripped away from him. At the same time though, there is like a scary and unfortunate thing that is occurring. Young channeler girls who have magical abilities are being kidnapped seemingly from their beds at night, and Cohen is basically working with another new character who I love to try to solve who and what is involved in this horrible scheme. In addition to that, Britta becomes closer and closer friends with Arduin. We do have a bit of a love triangle situation in this, but I am not mad about it, to be completely honest. Of course, all of these plot points begin to bleed together as all of the mysteries begin to like unfurl and explode, and you realize the stakes in this book are very, very high. Again, I have to say, I loved the second one even more than the first one. I feel like the author really expanded on not only the character development, but the politics, and the world just felt more expansive and more explained and just richer overall. Obviously, we kind of already have a background of these characters. We've already read a whole book with them, but I really feel like the author not only made them more tangible, but gave really great and realistic character growth. Britta specifically was such a joy to read from. I just have always loved Britta as a main character. She has a lot of insecurity, as anyone does, but she's also very grounded in what she wants and what she expects other people. Like, she's not going to just take something because she cares about something. She's going to tell that person that, hey, I'm not cool with what you just did. Like, we need to talk about this like adults, which is something I always really appreciate to see, you know, people making rationalized decisions. On top of that, we get to follow Britta uncover more of her channeler magic, which I think is just really, really unique and cool. We also follow Britta as she struggles with her like heritage and her past and trying to reconcile if people related to her are making bad decisions, does that impact who she is as a person and things like that. But aside from Britta, we actually had 2 more perspectives in the story. We follow Cohen's perspective, which I really enjoyed because in the first novel, while I liked Cohen, I felt he had some like personality things where I was like, you need to work on that. And the thing is, Britta was like, same. She saw those personality qualms and was like, you need to work on that. And we got to see Cohen experience so much character growth and also perspective on his own flaws. And like, that's kind of the first step, right? You acknowledge where you have issues and then you strive to work through them to become ultimately a better person. And I really like that. I mean, obviously Cohen is like not a bad person. He's sweet and honorable and sometimes maybe a little too overprotective, and we got to see Britta and Cohen kind of work through that in a relationship standpoint. But the third character perspective that we had, one of my new faves. We had Arwen, who is the king of Malum, and my goodness, I mean, I love a misunderstood prince, okay? Arwen as a character is fascinating because throughout the first novel, he was basically controlled by magic. He was a puppet, and in this book, he had to not only grapple with that, but then he also needs to like regain the trust of everyone in his kingdom to try to make it a better place. And we kind of only scratched the surface of that in this novel, but I feel like that has so much potential moving forward. So aside from all of the great characters in this novel, which I feel like were ultimately my favorite part, we also had so many wonderful plot elements. I mean, I felt like the plot of the story was just always at a rapid pace. I was flipping the pages. I wanted to know what happened next. And because we had those three perspectives that we were reading from, it really made jumping from chapter to chapter like addictive, because you read a Britta chapter and you're like, wait, no, but what happens next? You have to get through a Cohen and an Arwen chapter. You're like, ah, I'm finally back at Britta, like what's happening? But then you feel the same with the other characters too. Multi-perspective fantasy is always my favorite, hands down. The setting of this is also just fantastic. It has a very traditional, like fairy tale feeling to it, like a magical forest, a kingdom that's like, you know, being taken over by a dark power. We have these unlikely heroes going to try to save the day. It feels great. It just makes the story itself so fun. I feel like it's a little self-aware of its kind of like fantasy medieval setting, which I really like. The last element I want to talk about is the romance. I really felt like this romance was very nuanced. It was self-aware, and some people are gonna say it was a love triangle, and while it was a love triangle, I actually appreciated it because with a lot of young YA romances, we kind of have this definitive, I love you, the first person I fell in love with for the rest of my life and I know it, which in some instances is true and it feels great to read about, but in a lot of ways, if you're so young and you're making that decision, there's going to be sometimes confusion and doubt, and there's also a lot of like hurdles first relationships have got to go through. There's obviously the honeymoon phase where everything is perfect, but ultimately sometimes there's going to be few communication barriers. There's going to be a few emotional barriers, or like, hey, this bothers me. And it's about watching people kind of go through those first steps, become more comfortable with each other and more communicative with each other, where the romance can actually begin to flourish and survive long term. So there was nuanced confusion in this story, emotional and otherwise, but I felt like it was explored very effectively. It was by no means a situation where one person was holding something from the other, and both parties were very aware of their own flaws and their own concerns within the relationships, and they ultimately were able to effectively communicate the issues with each other, and as a group and as a couple work to better themselves and better their relationship, which is something I appreciated. I felt like it was like very mature. Overall, I thought Ever the Brave was a fantastic second novel to this world. I love the world, I love the characters, and I felt like the author did a great job expanding the plot and making the characters even richer from the first book. Ultimately, I gave this book a 3.75 out of 5 stars. I thought it was so much fun, and I would highly recommend it. Now, moving on to the cover reveal aspect of this, and honestly, I am so pumped for this book. But basically, there is another book coming out. It is a companion novel that is set in the same world as Ever the Hunted and Ever the Brave, but following a new main character and new storylines that I honestly couldn't be more excited about because it follows one of my favorite characters, and I can't wait to get a standalone novel about this. The book is called Once a King, and we follow Arwen basically trying to grapple with his kingdom, gain the security of the nobles around him, and work to make his kingdom a better place after all of the decades of horrible kings before him. I am so excited. This is a purely political novel. I cannot wait. Plus, Arwen was one of my favorite characters and Ever the Brave, and I just want to see him succeed and find love and just do good by his kingdom. And also, this cover though. I mean, honestly, I feel like this series has some of the most beautiful covers out there. They just feel like fairy tale books, you know? I just feel like they're so effective. Alrighty guys, that was my review of Ever the Brave. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys soon with another video soon. Goodbye!